As a recruiter, obviously I come across hundreds of different types of candidates from different backgrounds, experiences, different personalities, and I've always been thinking about the best way to kind of put it in regards to what is the number one shared characteristic or personality trait that I see amongst successful candidates in the job search. And this can be across any age group, any type of job, any experience level, whatever it is. And I think the best way that I can put my finger on it is that it just simply comes down to the dynamic in which these candidates approach the job search. So, obviously, we know nowadays like the job search is incredibly competitive. It doesn't matter if you're 21 years old out of university trying to get your first full-time job, or you're 50, 55 years old and you've got 30 years experience and you're still trying to get that next senior level job. The search is going to be competitive regardless. You are finding more and more people qualified to do your jobs, more and more people in society. So therefore the competitive nature is just going to keep growing. And honestly, as a recruiter, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think just as the world gets bigger, I think as universities grow, I think obviously more people are going to be coming out of university with more degrees. They're not creating more like units, they're not creating more subjects, they're not creating more degrees. It's just more people going in with the same degrees. And I think for a lot of people, as they become more and more confused with what they want to do in life, they're not going to stand out in the job search. So the market is always going to be competitive. I don't see that ever changing. But the biggest mindset difference that I see amongst successful candidates versus candidates that tend to get rejected is about the way that they approach interviews. Now, obviously, as we know, when you know that the market is so competitive, you treat a job interview with a little bit more of like subconsciously maybe a little bit more of like a desperate nature. And I don't mean that desperate in like a bad way, like you're begging for a job, but you go into it and you really overthink everything you do. I was in that position, when I was straight out of university trying to find my first full-time job. I was desperate to try to get that first bit of work. Like I knew once I'd got my first full-time job, my career would be in a solid position from there. But I also knew that getting that first job was going to be the hardest thing I'm ever going to do, because at the end of the day, you don't have any like literal experience or transferable experience that they can look at you and be like, this is 100% our guy. Like I was working in swim school management and I wanted to become a recruiter. You know what I mean? So when you're competing against hundreds of other people, sometimes people with more experience than you, it becomes a bit of a gamble. So obviously every time I was going in for a job interview, I carried myself with this little like this scarcity type of mentality, or kind of like a walking on eggshells type of mentality, where I didn't even want to risk saying the wrong thing, because I knew that if I did potentially say the wrong thing, it would throw me out the door straight away. And I looked at every job interview as kind of like a make or break, because that was all that I had in me. That was the only opportunity that I had going for me. Very quickly, though, guys, recruiters can see through that. Recruiters can see that when you've got that nature of like, you just want this opportunity so bad, they feel that tension, they feel that awkwardness from your end. And it's not a bad thing, but the only thing that happens, which I've experienced, is that it just creates more nerves. Like it just creates more nerves. And I think when you shift that mentality and you go, yes, I'm going in for a job interview. Yes, they're trying to see if I'm the right candidate, but I want to see if this is the right job for me. I want to see if this is the right boss for me. I want to see if this is the right company for me. When you start changing that dynamic a little bit, subconsciously, you stop putting all your eggs in this one basket. You stop looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, this interview has to go well. Ironically, you start being a little bit more relaxed, but you actually perform better. It's a really weird thing. I don't know what you'd call it, but that's just something that I would say is really, really like something that needs to be thought of more, I would say, because I think the biggest problem with job seekers nowadays is that because everybody wants a job, everybody knows that they're competing against hundreds of other people, people take a screening call as a win. You know what I mean? People take a screening call, people take that first round interview as a win, and they look at that as like their only thing in the pipeline. So could you imagine the stress and the anxiety of a candidate in that regard, who's applying for hundreds of jobs, getting ghosted, not even rejected, just getting pure ghosted from everywhere, finally gets some attention, finally gets that first interview, goes in for it. They are desperate for that job to happen. This is all that they're banking on. So naturally, they're going to go in for these interviews and they're going to feel a little bit more on edge. They don't want to risk saying the wrong thing. They're going to overthink everything they do, every word they pronounce, every time they blink. All these little things, they're just going to be overthinking it. And all that's going to lead to is you making more and more, just drop my pen. It's going to be leading you to more and more micro mistakes. And all that's going to happen is that's going to affect your performance. The biggest thing that I see from successful candidates is that they go into interviews and they almost don't care. Now, I'm not saying that's their mindset, but I'm just saying that you kind of get that feeling from them that they're a little bit more like, okay, well, you're asking me questions, I want to ask you questions. You know what I mean? And so naturally, they just go in with this more like relaxed type of mindset, but they perform so much better. You know, it's like me with these videos. Like when I very first started making YouTube videos, I was actually there like scripting these completely. Like, and when I mean scripting, I mean like word for word scripting. And what would happen is like I would read a sentence and it would just sound very unnatural. I would be overthinking every single thing I was saying, because I'd just be overthinking it. I have to say this sentence right, then I have to say that one right. And every like bit of information that I was saying, I was thinking, oh, is this good? Does this sound bad? Does it sound dumb? Blah, blah, blah. And I ended up just panicking all these times I'm making these YouTube videos. And you could see like I was very tense when I was presenting these videos. You know, now I don't have a script. I have an idea in my head and I just roll with it from there. You know, and naturally, because there's no script, I'm not relying on anything. I actually present better. I feel like I'm a lot more relaxed. I one take these videos. You know, so this is the mindset that you got to carry in with yourself moving forward. Is that you need to remember, guys, is like, yes, the company is trying to find the best possible candidate for their job, but you are trying to find the best possible environment for yourself. This is going to be a company where you're going to be dedicating 40 hours plus of your life every single week. You got to make sure that this is the right place for you too. And so that's what I see with these candidates, is that they're a lot more relaxed going into interviews because they understand that dynamic, you know? And I'll tell you guys, compared to where I was getting my first full-time job to then when I was leaving that first full-time job and I was interviewing in a couple places elsewhere, that mentality rubbed off on me a lot more as well. I would never go into an interview cocky. Like that's just, I don't think that's the right way to go either. But going into it a lot more relaxed and going, okay, these people are inviting me in for an interview. Amazing. I need to ask questions too. Going into it with that mentality is so much more productive than just sitting there and panicking and overthinking your every word and almost pedestaling the people that are interviewing you. Because then it's just a weird dynamic and you don't want that. Okay? I promise you guys, make that your actionable step moving forward, to remember the dynamic in job interviews and to remember that when you guys are going in for these interviews, okay, it is your job to see if it is the right environment for you as well. And you do this by asking key questions, and you do this by relaxing and waiting for them to give you good bits of information that's going to change your mind. Okay, you got to remember, guys, it is a two-way street. Do not lose that dynamic. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. All right, if you guys want any more information from me, feel free to click the links below in my bio. Hope you guys enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.